The year is 2024, which means 2023 is miles away now. We've had a good run, right? I mean, we've had some really good music come out, and hey, we even had a good selection of games. The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom being probably twice the size as Breath of the Wild, and if not better than its predecessor. Baldur's Gate 3 won Game of the Year, which is a huge monument for the turn-based combat genre. FromSoft released Armored Core 6, which is just a phenomenal FromSoft game that I think everyone should at least try, especially if you love mecha anime or if you have love for the Souls games. There were a lot of good games that came out this year, and moving in 2024, let's hope it'll be an if not better year for them. While playing these modern games, I tend to play some slightly older titles, as I may just want to break from the new gen titles and take a moment to breathe the old air I once used. My friends call me the old head of the group because I tend to like older media than new. In my defense, I look back at the games I grew up with in my childhood, as I'll never enjoy them as much the first time I did back then. And while I can never replicate those same moments or treasures as I did when I was in grade school, I can always find new ways to make new memories. An interesting format of making new memories are modern retro video games, where you can play a game that looks or feels like it's a hidden gem from a console like the NES all the way up to the PlayStation 1. Hell, even the PlayStation 2. These games could range from anything, whether it's a Metroidvania or even an FPS. They just have to fit the aesthetic for the time frame, what console they were trying to replicate. So sit back and enjoy the video as I tell you some of the coolest modern retro video games I think you may find interesting. The name's Josh, and I hope you enjoyed this fake nostalgia-filled ride I have planned for you today. Before we dip our toes deep, let's talk about modern games, but evolved backwards. Remakes are games that are quote-unquote remade, but for an older console generation. While there are not a lot to discuss with this topic, as the category is rarely discussed on the internet, these bite-sized hour sessions are condensed more as a project than a full-fledged title. For example, one of the most popular demakes I can think of at the top of my head is the Bloodborne demake, which is supposed to look like it was made for the PlayStation 1. You can only use the D-pad instead of the analog sticks, keeping with the PS1 DualShock controller scheme, and movement with the camera uses the L2 and R2 buttons, so don't expect any heavy attacks with R2 or L2 to change your trick weapon output to either damage or range. It's an impressive demake which has an amount of around 4 hours of content, which is one of the longest demakes I have probably ever played. One of the more unique demakes I had discovered while making this video was the Resident Evil 4 demake, which enhances the action element from the 2005 title classic Pop with more flair, and brings to the table a very interesting SNES graphic style. While Resident Evil 4 does focus more on action than horror, this demake changes the subcategory to a Scott Pilgrim art style beat 'em up. Nonetheless, it's still an interesting project, and to beat it only takes about half an hour. I will say, however, this game is actually kind of difficult and will take you a bit of time to learn the enemy's patterns before being able to fight your way through the horde. But once you get it down, you'll be able to fight the boss and beat it. Another interesting part about this remake is the platforming that can be seen all the way through, as jumping will be one of your most common actions along with shooting a gun and moving forward. You want to know something that's actually pretty weird? There's a lot of these modern retro games that are inspired by mostly platformers. I mean, I guess that's not too weird, since I want to talk about Koji Igarashi real quick. Okay. I don't think... So if you don't know who this man is, Igarashi, also known as Iga for short, was a former employee at Konami from 1990 to 2014. Over the time he worked there, he helped create a great franchise become even greater. The franchise in question being Castlevania. Once moving departments after he didn't want to create a sequel to Tokimeki Memorial Forever with You. Hopefully I pronounced that right. If I did, I'm very sorry. He was handed the role of assistant director for Symphony of the Night, released on the PlayStation 1 back in 1997. He originally mainly helped with the story writing along with programming. However, once the main director and producer Toru Hagihara was promoted to head division, he could not continue the project he helped start. So he asked Igahara if he could finish it, and thus finish creating the magnum opus of Castlevania. As the 2D games chapter was drawing to an end, turning to the pages of the 3D games, it was a bold move to keep Castlevania the same style as the mainline predecessor, Blood of Rondo. A huge inspiration for Symphony of the Night, by the way. I got nothing else to say on the matter. It was a banging game by a banging guy who did a bang-up job. He helped revolutionize the Castlevania games people love and play today, and with all the success he created, he also had created the genre known as Igavania, a genre that uses RPG elements in Metroidvanias, or can also be put as games directed by Igarashi. Iga continued helping the franchise until he left in 2014 to focus and pursue more ambitious projects. Jump to 2018, Iga helps release a game with the help of crowdfunding on Kickstarter, known as Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. Bloodstained is considered to be a grand successor to the Fallen franchise since the final title in the mainline games was Lord of Shadows 2. Bloodstained proved that Castlevania games could still work even after almost 5 years of non-continuation in the series, and the Kickstarter project promised to create a spin-off title if they passed their stretch goal of 4.5 million, as the original goal was $500,000 way back in 2015. In May of 2018, released Bloodstained Curse of the Moon, developed by Inti Creates, and it's basically a Castlevania-like game from the NES made 32 years later, which according to wikis and other stuff I found while researching, is mainly inspired by the third title in the franchise, Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, which we'll get to as in why later. Curse of the Moon has you as Zangetsu, a demon slayer who will not stop killing until all the demons are dead. It's a linear experience with less than 8 stages, but 6 endings to help with replayability. If you played at least a single Castlevania experience, then you'll feel right at home with this game. The Castlevania games are well known for its difficulty, or at least the NES titles were, so since this game is inspired by the NES titles, make sure to take your time as the levels progressively get harder and harder. Same way as how the original Castlevania games got. In total, you play as 4 characters, Miriam, Alfred, and Gebel being the last person you recruit. On the NES titles, you had a chance to find different gadgets or tools to help you against the monsters, whether they were just stage enemies or bosses. They drop by either destroying a candle on the wall or an enemy dropping once they were slain. These items consistent from throwing knives to clocks that can help stop the passage of time for a couple of seconds. The reason why I bring this up is because in Curse of the Moon, they do things a little bit differently. Each character has 2 sub-weapons which can help with obstacles along the way. For example, in the first stage, Zangetsu has 2 sub-weapons, a ball and chain, which hits diagonally whichever way you're facing, and a magic spell that casts a purple orb. Miriam also has 2 sub-attacks, hers being 100% better than Zangetsu in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, Zangetsu is absolutely fine to play, but this game just feels better when you play as Miriam, as it mimics Simon from Castlevania the most, or Trevor from Castlevania 3, if you want to be like that. Her main attack is using a whip, which gives the player more range to fight enemies, and the only downside is the less than 1 second delay. The first sub-weapon you'll see is her dagger move, which is thrown across whatever side of the screen you're looking at. Her next sub-weapon is also really good, as it's 3 daggers thrown diagonally, and after you clear stage 2, you'll meet a new ally who will aid you, known as Alfred. He is an alchemist whose attack is the worst one out of any of your party members, as his weapon is a rod with no range. But he makes up for it as he gives you more weapon points. His sub-weapons roster is a lot higher than anyone else in your party, however, as he can do Full Metal Alchemist type shit like freezing enemies or even freezing over death hazards like quicksand. One of the coolest sub-weapons, or should I just say abilities, is his Flame Spear, which makes him invulnerable to any attack that is thrown your way for a pretty decent amount of time. His third ability is Projection, which makes a clone and can help attack enemies behind or in front of the real Alfred. His last ability can only be found in green lanterns instead of the usual purple lanterns you break, but once found, you'll have the ability to summon an electric orb which chases the nearest enemy and traces into the enemy 3 times until it disappears. Each time you die, the character you played will not be revived until you pass the stage, or your entire party dies as well. Each stage contains a boss, most if not all unique to one another. One thing I noticed with these bosses is before they completely die, they use their biggest attack yet and try to take you down with them, which you never, maybe rarely see in video games at all. The bosses aren't necessarily hard, as you'll adapt quickly to what you need to do, and each boss has a gimmick to them. Like during the first boss fight, you have to use these wood piles to hit the boss's head if you're out of sub points. In the third level, the gold boss is similar to the first boss until you get to the second phase of the fight. The gold stacks start getting higher, and if you don't get to the top of the platform, then you'll be crushed to death. You'll have to destroy parts of the gold to access the top and hit the boss's head. If you're a die, you'll be taken to the second to last screen you were at before, the same way the original Castlevania games did before the game over screen. The comparisons to the original Castlevania and Curse of the Moon is to show how similar but different these games are. While most of these mechanics are relatively the same, Bloodstained Curse of the Moon alters these factors to give the game a fresh new coat of paint, modernizing the old. If this isn't your first time watching one of my videos, then you may have seen my last video, the top 10 scariest moments in video games, which, by the way, go watch if you haven't seen it yet. But in the beginning of the video, I was playing a game called Pseudo Regalia, released July 28th of last year. In the game, you play as this goat woman named Sybil, which, yes, she is caked up, and this is the only time I will comment about this. In this 90s inspired platform, you start out like any other platformer does. Slow, but not as slow as you would think. Sure, just starting out is slow compared to the rest of the game, but it's not as slow as others in the genre. In just about 5 minutes, you unlock the slide feature, which gives you a small boost of speed right after using. I love speed. Who doesn't? If you have ever died to a boss in a game, you still have to revolve around using the same speed as how you start out. It's not fun no matter what category it's in. Thankfully, this game changes all of that since for starters, there's only one boss. The most important factor, each upgrade you find helps with speed and mobility in some sort of way. After finding the Sun Greaves, you'll be able to kick in the air, which can also allow you to get to higher areas of reach. Another upgrade that can help with accessibility to higher areas of reach is the Sunsetter, which makes you plunge into the ground similar to the Super Mario games, but then spring yourself higher than how you would normally jump. You can even wall ride in this game, similar to how you wall ride in Twilight Princess with the dungeon exclusive item, the Spinner. It's probably the coolest ability and most innovative gameplay on here, as this applies to any wall that's smooth and doesn't have any corners/creases. I wish we saw these in other 3D games besides first-person shooters, since this is a really fun mechanic to use and it can be very creative to find secret items and such. You can even upgrade your slide ability to a slide jump, which I didn't even know you could pick up until I started researching for this video. I don't even know how I beat this back in August without that ability, since that was beneficial for a couple of jumps later in the game. I got lucky. In summary, the more you progress, the more unlockables you have to increase the fluidity of your speed. There's a lot of cool mobility techniques you can do in the game as well, whether it's bunny hopping, air braking, clean climbing, or even doing the slide jump right after obtaining the slide feature. I realized something, and I don't know if it's like a new technique or anything, but like, okay, here, I'll show you. Ignore, if you can hear my PC, also ignore that. Okay, but like basically, what is that? That's like so high up, and so basically, I don't know what it is. You just like press like A or X on the controller, like is this actually a thing? Because like you would never go that far before. So like, okay, so let's try. Okay, you see this? We're gonna try and do it here. So usually the route is you go up here, you go up here, fuck, hang on, go up here, fuck, you don't fuck, I mean, you can fuck if you want, I guess, but like that. Okay, so then, and then you go up here, right, and then you go here, and then it's like, oh, game saved. But like, okay, so now that we know that, okay, so I did it! Okay, is that like, okay, I don't know if this is like a speedrun strat or anything, but you're welcome. Because that takes out so much of your time. So like, if you just like right here, right, this like, yeah, like right here, you can just do, oh, dude, I love this game so fucking much, oh my god. The options are limitless for mobility, which is an amazing feature for a great game. One of the best things in the game for me was how I played it without almost any help besides one part I was stuck on, which I had to go backtrack and pick up the ability in the scariest part of the game, the underbelly, and you will be backtracking a lot in this game unless you know what you're doing, because this game is a Metroidvania. I love Metroidvanias because it helps you lose yourself in the game but still keeps you engaged looking for new items to help you increase your utility as you progress further. However, I felt that this should have needed a map of some sorts like most Metroidvanias have, because you can easily get lost and wound back at square one in just 10 minutes. Especially if you're looking for a key or a new ability that's required for you to keep going. Even if you do get lost in whatever area you end up, you can find yourself back to where you need to go, since these crystals are saves and checkpoints. One thing I love about saving in this game is how much time you save. Usually in a game that saves, you either have to pause, then save, or completely go into a submenu where the save save point is at and overwrite it. In Pseudo Regalia, you don't have to worry about any of that. You just go to the crystal, hit it, then leave. In the first area, you have to fight a boss to obtain a silver key to leave the first area, Dilapidated Dungeon. But after the boss fight, you may think there's another one. Unfortunately for you, that was not the case. Well, there is one more, but it's at the very end of the game. I was a little disappointed about this at first because I was anticipating more bosses, maybe to attain another key or a treasure that can be beneficial in some way, but being guarded by a tall, bulky enemy so it wouldn't be so easy to find. One of my favorite parts in Zelda are the mini bosses, as they always hold a treasure that can help you, whether it's the dungeon item or the boss key. And one of my favorite video games of all time is Majora's Mask. Besides everything that has ever been talked about, one thing I enjoyed were the dungeon mini bosses. In the first of the 4 main dungeons, Woodfall Temple, you'll find yourself in a room with the creature known as the Dinolfos. You're still fresh meat, so seeing a dinosaur breed in metal armor breathing fire was quite terrifying for my 11-year-old brain to handle. But once I had killed him, a chest appeared, revealing to be the hero's bow. The mini dungeon boss fights in Zelda always felt rewarding, as was the first fight in Pseudo Regalia. I just felt the first boss fight out of the only 2 didn't fit for the game, since there was only reward and not many risks. However, Pseudo Regalia is still a great game and well worth the $6 on Steam. I can't wait to see what this developer can do, and I'm actually very excited to play Electric Kinetic releasing in 2024. Speaking on the topic of 90s platformer titles, this next one is the reason why I made this video in the first place. Corn Kid 64 is another platformer, and it's actually pretty fun. You play as another goat hybrid who looks like they just went to Warp Tour back in the 2000s, and the main character's name is Sev, who finds himself stuck in a dream, and the only way to get out is of course by beating the game. One cool feature out of the dozens this game has is the jump ability. You can only jump once, but if you're next to a wall that had a crevice high in between, then you could jump onto that with a second jump to help you grab onto it. The art style is very cute and rad for a fake 90s game, and it kind of makes me wish we had more games like this platform because of how smooth the gameplay is, which you can't really see in the magic for other games this was inspired by, as hardware was limited back then. As was Pseudo Regalia, the abilities in this game also felt very fluid and didn't feel like you were wasting time enjoying the late 90s atmosphere. Steve and Alexis, your friend who is stuck in the dream with you, have these powers that they like to call corn powers. The main ability you will be doing most in the game is headbutting. Headbutting is very important as it helps you fight enemies. And with this ability, you can also headbutt into objects like vending machines, which drop soda and can help replenish your health if you're low. They do stop working at a certain point, however, but if you want to be full health, all you have to do was headbutt maybe once or twice, load into a new area, then go back and rinse and repeat. Headbutting isn't just a way to hit stuff, however. You can also use it to help unscrew or screw bolts in, which can help open new passageways. You will need to find several bolts along the way, however. You won't be able to screw in whatever you please, and some of these screws can be very hard to find. Another cool feature, which was also in Pseudo Regalia, is if you hit an enemy with a headbutt, you'll gain an extra jump each time, which feels very satisfying, especially if you're about to explore a new part of the world/level. I would consider these levels to be more of worlds because there's just so much to explore. There's a lot of sense of exploration in this. Before you beat the game, you may have completed about 75% of things, such as collectibles and experience points, with no intention doing it. I was in the Wallows Hollow for so long because I had no idea you had to climb up this pole to get to the drill tower, which is the next step to being this area. I did almost everything else, even unlocking the graveyard, before realizing I had to climb this. Later on, you unlock a new power which helps you drill into the ground and help you get up to places you can't use with your unmodified powers, and it's a fun feature. I played quite a few 3D platformers in my time, and I think Pseudo Regalia and Corn Kid 64 grasped my attention the most. This is gonna sound like a criminal act against the Geneva Convention, but I've never beat Super Mario 64 legitimately. The most stars I had got were less than 50, and then once I got bored, I did the backwards long jump exploit on stream way back in 2020. Let's freaking go. So, old platformers never held my attention span, but I don't know why it's different with these games. I spent an entire hour and a half just because I didn't know where to go. I even used this bomb to help knock this spike turtle on its back so I can jump on this platform so I can get to the top of this hill. And once there, I was eternally confused, not knowing what to do. It made me feel like a child again, not knowing where to go, lost in an eternal abyss of mindless wonder. It reminded me of playing Spyro for the first time as a kid, just chilling in the hub area thinking I was playing the game. Speaking of Spyro, do you remember Zoe from the Spyro games? If you do, then you'll know that if you run past her, she'll use her wand and zap you to save your progress. Seb's friend Alexis also does this and even acts as a checkpoint in that area, so every time you die, you'll respawn where Alexis last zapped you. I haven't even mentioned what else you can do in this game because it's not worth talking about when you can just play it for yourself. With only the cost of $7, you can get this game today.
Premiere Pro crashed out on me again. I think, okay. Well, I guess I'll just use a different editing software. Ignore that.
Alright. Hey everyone, this is the outro, so that means the video is over. So if you want, you can watch another video. If you want, watch another one of my videos if you want. It's up to you. But the main reason why I'm here in my red room, and red ceiling included, is because I wanted to correct a mistake that I made for Pseudo Regalia, which is about the map. Basically, there's a new map system in Pseudo Regalia. There was a new update that came out about 3-4 days ago, I believe. And it's basically where you have a mental map if you like press up on the D-pad or something like that if you're on controller. And you'll be able to see like where you are or where you have to go, maybe explore a new area that you haven't discovered yet. So there you go. I don't really have to mention that anymore. So Regalia just got a whole lot better, if you ask me, because it is a Metroidvania. And I think Metroidvanias do require maps because I think it just makes it better for exploration and such. But another thing I also want to talk about is March 12th, which is a day, 7 p.m. CDT, I will be live streaming. And the reason I'll be live streaming is because it's my birthday, but it's not just any one of my birthdays. I know it looks like I have a baby face, but this baby face is turning 21 years old. So what that means is I can basically legally drink in the United States, and so I am going to do that on stream. I'm not gonna get hella drunk, I'm just gonna get a little bit teensy weensy drunk, right? But basically I will be celebrating the 7 years I've been on YouTube and Twitch, and so it's gonna be a fun time, hopefully. So I'm just gonna talk about and reminisce about the times I was a cringe 15, 14-year-old kid. Now here I am. I don't like that. So what that means is I'm also going to have a few guest appearances, hopefully. The main confirmation I do know about is Aether. And if you don't know what Aether is, that means you're not a part of the Twitch family, which that means you should be a part of the Twitch family if you are interested. But basically, I will be streaming on twitch.tv/namesjosh, which will be in between my hands. It's going to be a fun time. I don't know how long this stream is going to go for. It might go for a while. Who knows? But I will say I do have pretty shoddy internet, which that would basically mean that I may have to reschedule, and if I do have to reschedule, you'll be the first to know if you are in my Discord server, which is also linked in the description below. I'm not gonna do any like live streams for this YouTube channel or any like community messages. The main community messages I'm going to be making will be on my Discord. So that means if you want, you could turn on post notifications just so you wouldn't have to miss a single upload of one of mine. And also, another thing, this is not going to be the only video about this topic on this channel. I will also be discussing, hopefully soon, some more games, and it's going to be a second part to this series. It's something like that at this point. But I'm very excited. I hope you are too, and I will say if I don't have it uploaded before the end of March, then I'll have it uploaded in April for sure. So I do hope you're excited as much as I am. I'm very excited for where this channel is going. I know I had that almost 3-year hiatus this, so hopefully I can redeem myself to you guys some way or another. Also, again, thank you for the support on the last video I made. Not the Lethal Company video, which also a good video if you haven't seen it. But as always, guys, thank you again so much for letting me have this opportunity. I hope you guys have a good day, good night, wherever you are. And I also hope you stay safe, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video, whenever that will be. The name's Josh, and I'll see you guys later.